The tennis US Open is about to kick off, but this year's script can be totally different. Can Zheng Qinwen fight her way back from the rankings abyss? Who steps up against the Sinagan and Alcaraz Rusty? And the mixed doubles, the two-day high-stakes showdown has joined the biggest names. Welcome back to the chaos. This is Sideline Story. I'm Yang Guang, and today, alongside my co-hosts Tian Yu and Brandon Yates, we're breaking down everything that matters for this year's US Open. If you love the show, hit that subscribe button, drop your predictions in these comments, and let's get into it. Okay, now let's start with the women's draw and a compelling redemption story. Zheng Qinwen finds herself in an unfamiliar and humbling position. She has dropped to 127th in the world rankings and has to fight through the qualifying rounds just to earn a spot in the main draw in New York. It's been a grueling year for her, met with, persistent injuries and inconsistent form.
Yes.
Tian Yu, the big question is, can she rediscover her fire and fight her way back to her peak level? Or could this adversity actually push her to evolve into an even more complete player?
First looking back at Zheng Qinwen's past two seasons, I think, like you said, it's really been a roller coaster for her. I think even last year, even though she didn't win a major title, she had some inconsistent performances. She was still making quarterfinal rounds at several tournaments. I mean, she even beat her biggest rival, Sabalenka, in the Rome Open quarterfinals. So at that point, I think she kind of proved that she was still competing with the very best. But then came that terrible elbow injury. Things really went downhill from that on. And what made things even worse was her rushed comeback. I think after the surgery, she was supposed to take a rest for at least 3 months.
Yeah.
But instead of following the requirements, she pushed herself to return earlier because she wanted to take part in the China Open. And in the end, she had to retire from that tournament because the injury just came back. And that forced her to spend even more time recovering. And after that, we know the script. She had several early access at Grand Slam tournaments, and her confidence seemed to have disappeared, and her ranking took a huge nosedive. And now she has to start from qualifying at the US Open. And the last time she won at a Grand Slam match was more than a year ago. So I understand why a lot of people are questioning whether she can get back to her old level. But I actually think the biggest positive for her now is actually mentality. She has now gone through injuries, poor forms, and a lot of criticism. And maybe I think all of that can make her a stronger player mentally. Because we've seen Zheng struggle a lot with pressure before. I mean, especially when she has very high expectations for herself. But after her first qualifying round win, she said that she has nothing to lose now and she has to start from scratch. And I kind of like that kind of mentality. When you've already fallen from like the 5th in the world to 127th, you've really got nothing to lose. And all you've got to do is just go out there and fight. We did see some positives in that match. I mean, there were a fewer unforced errors. And there's a high first serve percentage points, and there were several aces in the game. It looked like she was slowly regaining her form and her confidence. Even though I don't expect her to suddenly produce a miracle run at the US Open, I still won't write her off immediately because she is still young, and if she can stay healthy and gradually rebuild her confidence, I still believe the confident Qinwen we saw before will come back eventually. But it just takes some time.
Right. Brandon, what do you make of Zheng Qinwen's situation? Do you see her decline a prolonged one, like what happened to Raducanu, or does she have a shot to fight her way back?
No, I think the mentality part of it is quite big. When you compare it to someone like Raducanu, for example, I always felt like she, Raducanu, kind of reached her peak way too soon, which Zheng Qinwen hasn't done yet. And I think that Raducanu didn't really know how to handle the pressure or the spotlight, whereas Zheng Qinwen seemed to handle it relatively well because even though she wasn't winning Grand Slam, she did, go on to claim that Olympic gold medal and she stayed relatively consistent. before the injuries began, which I think is incredibly important if you're looking for, sort of sustained success. But I think the problem with maintaining that level of consistency was that I still believe that she played way too much tennis way too early on. And I think that was part of her downfall, at least in these early stages of her career, because I think that she always just, to me, looked overworked, overstressed, was placing far too much pressure on herself, and just seemed to sort of mentally psych herself out of playing at her highest level. I think, particularly at Grand Slams, we'd see her cruise through the sort of opening rounds. Then whenever things became a little bit tense for her, or when she came up against opposition that was at her level or higher, she sort of capitulated and started falling foul to a lot of unforced errors, which at that level, when you're sort of in the top 5, top 10, the literal difference between, winning and losing is it's inches, it's really, a lot of it does come down to mentality. And, we've seen the likes of Sabalenka and others, just showcase a lot more of like a killer instinct and confidence, which I don't think Zheng Qinwen has accomplished yet mentally. But maybe this sort of return and falling away from the international spotlight maybe offers her an opportunity to sort of refocus and sort of collect herself and work on her mental game as much as her, actual tennis game, which I think is going to be incredibly important for her. She still is relatively young, in terms of like life, but in terms of tennis, 23 is not that young anymore. Hey, I think that we need to, realize that if she's not getting a Grand Slam title by the age of, let's say, 26 or 27, it becomes harder and harder to maintain peak levels after that. So time is sort of ticking to a certain degree. And I still think there's things that she needs to sort of sort out before she, gets back to like being on the Grand Slam quarterfinal, semi-final, and final stages. I still think that she needs to work on her power game. I still think that when she comes up against elite female players, which I think will happen sooner rather than later, just purely because of her mental fortitude, I think that she will find form and get back to her best soon. But so when she does come up against her formidable foes, I think that if she isn't stronger than what she used to be physically, I think she may struggle. She's always had the fitness, she's always had the drive, she's always had the the backhands, and she's always had the sort of technical ability. But I think that pure power and just that strength, I think, is going to be very important for her going forward. So hopefully she's playing less tennis, maybe spending a little bit more time in the weight room, but along with staying in the weight room, also getting enough recovery, nutrition, etc., as opposed to just playing 24/7 and hoping for the best, which we've seen with some elite players that really curtailed their career much sooner than expected. I think Rafael Nadal's a fantastic example of that. But even though she has sort of fallen away from the international spotlight, the China spotlight is still clearly very firmly on her, because she's just come back and we're already talking about her, right? So I think that she's fully aware of the fact that the whole of China is placing all of their hopes on her to win a Grand Slam, which I would not want to be in that position. Even though I think she is well equipped to deal with that, I think that whether she's ranked 4th or 400th, while she's still playing, I think that, China are really expecting her to win every game that she goes into. So it remains to be seen how she deals with that mentally. And then, of course, we still have to see if she can return to her levels that we became accustomed to before the injury. So, yeah, I think there's still a lot more question marks and answers around Zheng Qinwen at this point in time. But I think that she is a wonderful talent and a wonderful example of mental fortitude in terms of being able to bounce back from setbacks. So I think that, we still have to see what's going to happen, but I have faith that she definitely will have the opportunity to get back to her best and claim that Grand Slam that, she and the whole of China and many other fans around the world are so desperate for her to finally claim.
Right. In the latest interview, Zheng Qinwen said she's finally able to play pain-free. I mean, that's a positive sign. That means physically she's finally ready.
Yeah.
I still believe she has the top 10 quality or even more.
Yeah.
But it all hinges on her mindset. I mean, a long injury layoff can destroy an athlete's game mentality. First to be hit is confidence. We've seen it happen to Raducanu, it happened to Naomi Osaka. I'm not sure Zheng Qinwen can go through it, but if she can, Zheng Qinwen could grow even stronger, I believe. But for now, I think the priority for her is to, take it match by match, point by point, not thinking about results, not thinking about rankings or whether she let people around her down or 1.4 billion back in China down.
Yeah.
Then perhaps the phoenix is finally ready for rebirth. Now let's shift to the men's side. The landscape has been turned upside down for this year's US Open. Jannik Sinner has officially withdrawn. On top of that, there's a massive cloud of uncertainty surrounding Carlos Alcaraz as he returns to action after a months-long injury layoff. His match fitness and rhythm remain complete misery, I would say. So Tianyu, given these seismic shifts, what does this suddenly mean for the US Open men's singles draw?
Well, I think, first of all, Jannik Sinner's withdrawal is obviously great news for Alcaraz and also the rest of the field. I mean, a healthy Sinner can be a monster to beat, especially on hard courts, because, with his speed and movement, it just makes him such a tough opponent on the US Open court. We also need to note that, like you said, Alcaraz is coming back from a wrist injury, and that's particularly important because the hard court can be quite physically demanding. Every serve, every return, and every powerful shot is putting a lot of pressure on the wrist. And so even if he feels physically ready, there could be still a mental question in the back of his mind, like when he's playing, like, can I really play every shot at full power without worrying about the injury or my wrist? He also needs to manage his game load carefully, because you can't just come back with, after 4 months and immediately play every match as if nothing happened.
Yeah, it really surprised me that the first tournament after his comeback is a Grand Slam.
Yeah,
it's a 5-set Grand Slam.
Yeah, it's really a bold move.
Yeah.
So yeah, like for me, I think that just makes Alcaraz a very difficult player to predict. Personally, I'm not very optimistic about him, winning the final trophy. And that makes the men's draw much more open. And Djokovic is obviously one of the biggest candidates, especially with the record 25th Grand Slam title in sight. He has also been managing his schedule very carefully this year. I mean, he's been skipping some tournaments so that he can save his energy for the bigger ones. And now with Sinner out and Alcaraz still trying to regain his form, this could be a very good opportunity for him. But still, at 39, you could visibly see him struggle at numerous occasions in the later stages of the long matches. And we've seen that against João Fonseca at the French Open when he lost a big lead, partly because he couldn't maintain the same level of physicality. I think the US Open could also be brutal for him because the ball moves quickly and the rallies can be really intense. So it's going to be a huge test for him. And apart from him, I'd also keep an eye on Alexander Zverev. I think Sinner has been Zverev's biggest obstacles in recent years because he's been beaten by him so many times. So with Sinner gone, this could be a really good opportunity for him. But his biggest problem is still the mentality. Sometimes a bad moment or a single mistake could cost his momentum or even the entire match. So overall, I think this will be a very open tournament. I mean, Djokovic has his chance, Zverev has a very good opportunity, and even some of the younger players will be, having a great chance. So without Sinner and Alcaraz still recovering, there's no obvious favorites anymore. That makes the men's competition really worth watching.
Right. As a Djokovic fan, I really hope to see him lift the 25th major title at the US Open this year. I really think now only Alcaraz and Sinner can beat Djokovic in the Grand Slam final. But the problem is whether Djokovic can even reach the final. And the French Open, as you mentioned, with Alcaraz absent and Sinner out, it looked like the best shot for him to get that 25th. But somehow he fell short against Fonseca in the quarterfinals. So that's the problem. Djokovic can't guarantee at least the semifinal at the Grand Slam anymore. He can fall down against someone he used to dominate. His consistency is seemingly falling apart. Yeah. I mean, if losing only to Alcaraz and Sinner is stage 1 of his decline, then occasionally struggling against the top 20 or even top 30 player now might be stage 2 of that process. And meanwhile, I don't think Djokovic has that stubborn idea for the 25th major trophy. He's not that desperate. I'm not saying his motivation is less than before, but it seems like to me he's enjoying the game, let the fate take him in terms of Grand Slam trophies, rather than, play with that do or die mentality.
Yeah.
That's just my thoughts. So, Brandon, do you expect a new champion at this year's US Open men's singles?
Yeah, I think the sort of tournament's been blown wide open on the men's side of things, which I think we always appreciate. Although at the same time, I think that I always sort of appreciate a fully fit Alcaraz and Sinner at any Grand Slam tournament in particular, because I think we're hoping to once again see a sort of rivalry emerge, on the level of, the competition that we saw between Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic over the years. And I think Sinner and Alcaraz definitely have the potential to carry that momentum forward. But again, it's also sometimes nice to have a Grand Slam where, it's pretty unpredictable on the men's and women's side, which I think we can expect this year. And even though I'm not necessarily a Djokovic fan, I definitely am, a record-breaking history sort of fan. So if Djokovic could go on and achieve that feat at his age, I think that would be remarkable and very, very difficult to match. To see that happen at his age would be phenomenal. So I am hoping that he can go as far as possible. But the problem is that the stamina at his age, as you guys have mentioned, it just makes it so hard, because even though he might be playing at a Grand Slam final winning level in the first or second round, by the time you get to this, quarterfinal, semi-final stages, even if you're playing guys that are slightly below your level, if they have a lot more stamina and energy than you, sometimes that really, and speed, sometimes that really does win the day, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, it'll be interesting to see how Djokovic manages this tournament. And Zverev, I'm sure will be thrilled to get that sort of Grand Slam hump, off his back, and now he's, up there with the elites in the game. So I'm sure that he's also going into the tournament with a lot of confidence, especially if his biggest rivals are either aging or battling injury, or there seems to be sort of question marks around a lot of his highest level opponents. So that's also something that will probably give him a lot of confidence. I think, also a couple of other sort of wild card and local names, like Fritz and Shelton and a couple of other guys, that could always be, a bit of a question mark at the US Opens. That'll also be interesting to watch. So I think that it's very sort of unpredictable at this stage. I definitely am, from my perspective, I'd love to see Djokovic get to another Grand Slam final and hopefully, get over the line this time and claim that 25th title. But I think at this early stage, any sort of top 10 entry can be feeling very confident that this might be their opportunity to claim a Grand Slam.
Right. Now, zooming out to the bigger picture, over the past 2 seasons, Alcaraz and Sinner have been the undisputed heirs to the throne, putting up really dominant and almost video game-like numbers. Yet this year, both have hit a brutal wall, I would say, with the injury crisis that sidelined both of the players for critical stretches. This made me realize, okay, their dominance can be fragile sometimes. And what we take for granted for the past 2 seasons towards those 2 players is not guaranteed for like 10 years. So Tianyu, even with their undeniable talent, are Alcaraz and Sinner actually on a realistic trajectory to chase down Djokovic's seemingly untouchable Grand Slam tally of 24, or something even greater?
Well, if we're just talking about numbers and potential, I think it's actually very possible for them to end up with double-digit Grand Slam titles. I mean, Alcaraz has already won more Grand Slams than Djokovic had at the same age. And Sinner has also been ahead of Djokovic's pace at some points. But I would say getting to 20 is just a completely different story. I mean, that's the level where talent alone is not enough. I mean, you have to stay healthy, keep improving every day, adapt as you get older, and deal with new generation players coming after you. Staying focused for another 10 to 15 years It's just a completely different challenge. I think that's probably the one reason why so few players have ever reached 20 Grand Slam titles. Like we mentioned, I think they will also have to deal with the same thing that Djokovic dealt with, which is aging and younger players chasing after them. I mean, Djokovic was beaten numerous times by younger players, but mentally, I think he never really surrendered. I think at the end of the day, I would say the biggest challenge for Alcaraz and Sinner isn't whether they're talented enough. It's whether they can maintain that hunger, stay healthy, and just keep pushing themselves for many, many years to come.
Yeah, if we look at their pace of winning Grand Slam trophies, I mean, Sinner and Alcaraz, it looked like they were on the track to achieve the number of 24. But this year, this pace has been disrupted and made me think, okay, this consistency of winning Grand Slams for 20 years achieved by Djokovic is not guaranteed.
Yeah.
Okay, finally, let's talk about one of the most audacious experiments in Grand Slam history. Last year, the US Open completely overhauled the mixed doubles format, compressing it into a 2-day high-stakes mini event with just 16 pairs, but paired with a staggering prize money increase. And it worked like a charm for star power this year. We're looking at blockbuster dream teams like Alcaraz teaming up with Serena.
Yeah.
Djokovic partnering with Sabalenka, though both pairs were knocked out early. But it's a marketing gold mine, I would say. Here's the rub, Tianyu. Well, this undoubtedly ramps up the entertainment value and mainstream buzz. Do you feel it dilutes the competitive seriousness and kind of unfair for those career doubles specialists who grind out all year on the tour?
Well, I actually think it's a good thing because for quite a long time, I think doubles events have been kind of overshadowed by singles when it comes to public attention and prize money. So when you bring in some big name singles players, I think you suddenly get a lot more media attention, media coverage, and a lot more people talking about doubles.
And the prize money.
Yes, and the money counts most importantly. And of course, there's a downside, like you said. Some of these new pairs are formed mainly for entertainment. And like you said, some of the singles players don't have much experience playing doubles. And we've already seen big names get knocked out quite early. But at the same time, there are also teams like Andreeva and Rublev that have made a really impressive run. So I think it's not like the whole thing just has become a show with no competitive value. And I actually think this could help career doubles players in the long run, because if more people start watching mixed doubles events, they might also discover the doubles specialists who have been playing this format all year. It kind of gives these players a bigger stage and brings more attention to a part of tennis that usually doesn't get enough spotlight.
Okay, I'm on the opposite side on this arrangement. To me, it's totally entertainment. I don't know if you watched the mixed doubles opener for Djokovic and Sabalenka. They were dressed like it's a fashion show or an opera play rather than a competitive match. I'm very glad that they were knocked out in the first round because, yeah, it looked like they are there to have fun, not victory. Another match, as you mentioned, Rublev paired with Andreeva at one point. The two players ran into each other and knocked each other down to chase the ball simultaneously. And it tells you singles are singles and doubles are just doubles. At the end of the day, I just think it's not a very good idea to put those big names into this doubles competition. It kind of undermined the competitiveness of the matches. I mean, yes, in the past, those doubles specialists didn't get enough spotlight, but they were playing, serious, competitive tournaments. And now this seriousness is kind of gone, and the singles big names are kind of making a fuss. Brandon, what do you think about this arrangement? How do you view this format?
Yeah, look, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because I think that the entertainment factor is very important, because I think doubles definitely does require more eyes on it. And I think that getting the biggest stars in the game into it is going to help that. But at the same time, if it does diminish sort of the doubles tournament a little bit, then you can also argue that people that have been doubles specialists for a decade, that are all of a sudden being overshadowed and seeing their tournament turn into a bit of a spectacle, they may also feel very disrespected by that. So I think that it is a bit of a balancing act. And we also have to bear in mind, Yang Guang, you mentioned that clash between two, very high profile singles players. If that also leads to injuries to singles players, that could also be very, very detrimental for some of their potentially careers or a single season.
Right. To me, the bottom line is mixed doubles are not exhibition matches. Okay, let's see how the US Open will be played out. With that, we end this episode of Sideline Story. Thank you so much for joining us. Subscribe to Sideline Story and leave your comments wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information, you can also check our website at radio.cgtn.com. Until next time, stay on the sidelines with us.